Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and the trailblazers of early education, welcome to an electrifying dialogue on the forefront of preschool pedagogy. I am Aradhana Rana, the director of the Icon Public School in Western India, and I'm thrilled to steer this riveting exploration of innovating teaching methods and pedagogical approaches in preschool years. Before we embark on this dynamic conversation, I must tell you that the inception of my own school was very humble, and then it's now blossomed into a CBSE senior secondary school in a span of 18 years. Witnessing the evolution of pedagogy in early education, I have come to believe in the boundless potential for innovation in this realm. Today, we are joined by a stellar cast of educators and visionaries who are at the forefront of shaping the future of preschool education. Being the foundation years of life, what we do at this stage has a lot of bearing on what happens to this generation we produce ahead. So, though it's a very important part of education, strangely, it is not so well recognized. And that is why bringing in innovation to this particular realm of education is very important, and having a thought process on it very important. So let's begin with our discussion with the panelists. First of all, Daisy, since you're the lady, my first question is to you. Now, coming from the vibrant city of Sharjah, do share your expertise on coping with individual learning styles in children. We all know that small children, you cannot have the same style of teaching in a class too. There are various children who are, differently inclined. So, from that point of view, as an educator, what would you recommend for individual learning styles?
Thank you so much, and a very good evening to everybody present here. Thank you so much for having me on the panel. I think this is something that is very close to my heart at school, and I have done a lot of research with students at school, and I formidably believe that at Ryan Group of Institutions, and most of our schools at Ryan, we follow the Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory. So we believe that the students in all classes have diverse features, have diverse ways of learning things and bringing out the skills in them. So what we do is we know that we identify. The first thing that we do to ensure that we are coping up with individual learning skills is identifying the students in different groups. So to identify the students in different groups, we have a large scale of observation and monitoring that happens. So this is going to give us a true picture of what kind of learning style should be adapted for that particular child. For example, there would be children who would be linguistic, there would be children who would be spatial, who would be having some interpersonal skills, the personal skills, and of course, they would be, logical. So working on all those domains of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory and having 8 different kinds of learning styles is what we adapt at our school, and that's how we train our teachers. So after the assessment and the observations, we have multi-stationary, or we call them multi-sensory activities, which are organized for all the students based on their differentiation levels. So I would say differentiating of activities at kindergarten is something that is very important, and that's what helps us to give up or cope with the individual learning skills of students. Once we are able to differentiate the activities, it gives the students a path to pave their own learning. So once children are able to move to different learning stations, they know what kind of activity that they enjoy best, they should be taking it forward. So if a child is enjoying development of skills at the KG level, I think they are doing tremendous job, and that as a teacher, as an administrator, as a principal, is something that I would love to see amongst the students. So various learning stations, various learning activities, of course, we call them the performing learning, grounds, or the portfolios that we construct for them based on their different styles. That give us a lot of project-based learning to be done with the students as per their differentiation. So I think it's very important to cope up with the learning styles of children at kindergarten level, and that's how you can chisel the skills of the 5 skills that I would like to have the kindergarten children develop is, of course, reading, writing, speaking, listening, and playing. So if we can chisel these 5 skills at the kindergarten level by differentiating the activities that they participate in, I think we are doing a good job. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Daisy. What is the size of your classrooms?
The size is approximately, 35.
Can you manage all this in 30, with 35
Yes.
children?
So what I said in the beginning is that we have different learning platforms. So we have different learning stations. So we rotate students on these different rotations, on these different stations. So we have rotational learning. So when we have diverse group of students who are learners, they move around the stations by themselves and they are now trained.
And how many teachers to?
We have 2 teachers in a class, a main teacher and an assistant teacher. So they help in grouping the students in different stations.
Well, very good. If she's achieving that with 2 teachers, 35 students, that means it can be done. I think where we need is the competency of teachers to do that, because a lot of schools, I think, suffer because of, I think, higher.
Yes, you're right. So I want to clarify here with the primary students, where we also follow the learning stations, we have 30 students,
Okay.
but in the KG, we have just 20. So
Okay.
it gives us diverse methods of working on to each one of them individually. Because of the class strength being less, I think this is something good that we can look into on a daily basis.
Yes, that's what I've observed, that in preschool years, lesser the number of children, more you can do with them.
Yes,
But if a school can achieve that with a higher number of children, I personally believe it leads to better social skills.
absolutely.
I have seen schools with 5 to 7 children per class. They believe they're doing a great job, but social skills, I always felt, were a little lacking. Thank you so much, Daisy.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, Mr. Ramdas comes from a very financial background in higher education, but somewhere, I think, deep down in his heart, he does have school education also. So that is why I suppose he's in this panel. Otherwise, with his qualifications and his background, he would be in a university level panel. But since you're here, I would like to ask you, what kind of multimedia tools would you recommend for a multi-sensory approach? All of us know that children need a multi-sensory approach in preschool years. So, with this in mind, what would you suggest?
Thanks a lot, madam, for your kind words, and thanks for this World Education Summit for inviting me in this distinguished panel. School, high school, or higher education doesn't make any difference for me. Education is education, and in fact, what you learn in the preschool and the high schools are the foundations for your career in all your part of your life, and I think that makes a big difference. How do you get taught in your schools makes a big difference. Coming to the specific question, ma'am, is that sensory skills and multi-sensory skills are very integral part of every human talent. Now, if we talk about preschools, kids, as a preschool kid during in the 80s, and I was put in training programs where we used to be taken every week out to play in the gardens, so that we touch and feel the butterflies, some of the small animals. Also, we are asked to play with some clay tools so that we are very close to the nature, right? So that's how our fingers and all these skills and multisensory skills have developed. So the more close you are to the nature, the more you become more multisensory intellectual. Now, we are in the modern age. 30 years across my life from the schools, I can see that a lot of changes have happened even in the preschool, right? Now, connecting the preschool to the high school, to the higher education, to the job, there are a lot of skills that needs to be tuned at the very young age itself. Now, let me talk about the Pashgender model of, we call them as something called emotional intelligence, something called as IQ, but there is something called emosensory intelligence, which is close to the multisensory intelligence, which is made up of 6 components like visual, auditory, olfactory. You talk about kinesthetic, or you talked about tactile, all these movements, all these bodily aspects of multi-sensory skills has to be developed right from the school days. But what I see nowadays is that the kids are now using a lot of gadgets, correct? So they're already getting tuned to the concept of how to develop the skills automatically to deal with these type of electronic gadgets. But what I'm going to talk now is something, maybe a wow factor, is that these kids are going to be working in future not with co-humans. They're going to work with co-robots. No, they're going to work with co-humanoids. So these co-humanoids need socio-robo skills. We as academicians, we as preschool trainers need to inculcate these multisensory skills wherein these kids will be at ease in future, able to cope up to the so-called interaction with the social skills required with the humanoids interaction. So this is what I see as something to be inculcated in the preschool and also could be in the mid-school as well, so that the future citizens become very, very strong in these sensory skills. So with this, I would say that integrating these skills at preschool is very, very mandatory going forward.
Thank you so much. I think he's also answered one of the questions on a previous panel where the panelist was questioned, how do you visualize education in the next 5 years? So preschool education with robos, I think this is one visualization which has come in on this panel from the previous one. So I'm sure, the way we see education changing, there is actually nothing, short of our imagination that we can imagine. We cannot actually imagine what will happen, and this is one of the imaginable things that he has enumerated. We would probably have some kind of robos in the classroom. So like he said, the children would develop some kind of socio robo skills, which today it's difficult to imagine, but another 5 years I'm sure it will be one of the run of the mill things. So I'm sure that will happen. Very, very nice, I think, visualization. Um, Coming to you, Dr. Reddy. Now, experiential learning is the buzzword today. We just talk of experiential learning. I don't know whether, we've learned the terms now, so we become more aware, because somewhere, in my childhood, things were done in experiential learning methods also. We never had a term for it, but now we do, and we become very, very aware of it. So how do you translate it to the pedagogical approach for young learners? For the very, very inexperienced, they hardly have any experience in life, and yet you are teaching them through experiential learning. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think education is at its best when children or students experience it. They need to feel, taste, smell, maybe hear everything, even visual impacts. I'll give you one or two examples what we did. I mean, something that has happened last week in my school. In the kindergarten, there was a lesson about materials. So they were learning about different type of materials. It's KG2 lesson. So there was something about the rough surface, soft surface, all that. And then as the teacher explained it, she also said, okay, take a car, a toy car, and try to run it on those surfaces. So they demonstrated, and children found that on certain surfaces, the car was easily moving. On certain surface, the car couldn't move. And then the teacher said, okay, now slope it on a pedestal or something, and then slide the car. So then on certain surface, the car went at a distance. On certain surface, it couldn't move longer. And then they measured the length of the distance. Of course, not the standardized measurement. It's a non-standard measurement that we use in the kindergarten. So hand span, or the length of a tissue box, or could be something else, the block that is available. So I think, see, all these are examples of experiential learning. Now, for example, another example I can give you, we have the story of gingerbread. Now, gingerbread man story is very famous in the kindergarten. Now, the simple question that we need to put to the child is that, okay, if you were to bake a gingerbread man, what shape would it be? What material it could be? Or if the gingerbread man comes to you after escaping, how would you save him, or what do you do with him? Now he reached the river. How do you help him to cross the river? I think those are the ways where we bring in visualization and experiential learning, and it has a huge impact on them. One, it creates originality in their thinking. It also helps them to be creative and feel the touch, the smell, the emotions, everything comes into action. And I think that would be a greater learning. I'm sure I should have answered that.
Thank you so much. Yes. Besides the experiential learning of, say, sensory learning as such, a more practical form of learning, I personally believe that life skills, like what people have generally been saying, is not a curriculum subject. Life skills is a part of every learning. So, from that point of view, how does incorporating life skills in preschool education help in later years, and how can we practically do it?
Well, I think, going back to the same story of the gingerbread man, if we were to ask those students to demonstrate it, and for us, especially in my school, we concentrate more on spoken part of it. Communication and language is the focus for us in the kindergarten. So, going back to the same story, either they can draw it, the story that they visualize, and they speak about it. They can also role play it, which is again a skill, because socializing and being emotionally strong, facing audience also is critical in part of life skill,
Yes.
communication. Okay. And then they also give you different ways or methods of crossing the river, for example, which is again critical thinking. So all these opportunities create a lot of life skills or the soft skills in life, which they will be able to feel more confident as they grow.
Yes, thank you so much. So Ramdas, I would like you to somehow go back in time, and like you said, you did preschool many years ago, and from that period of time to now, which are the innovations you think that have taken place that we did not even visualize, say, 10 years ago?
I wish this question has been asked always in my life. Uh, I just want to share a piece of experience from my own personal life, actually. Uh, I wasn't a good academic student till grade 8, which means I maybe if somebody would have tested me medically, I would have suffered from the attention deficiency, possibly, wherein if given a piece of paper, I could read it and understand for myself instead of able to listen from somebody else, which wasn't captured during my school days, so which made me not to get good grades in the school. So what I'm thinking is that it was a generic learning space, not an individual to individual learning space that was invented those days or discovered those days. Now I can see the concept of uh, taking a group of students or individual focused concept of learning has come out. This is one great innovation, because one common medicine cannot be the remedy for all of the diseases. Similarly, one teaching pedagogy or methodology cannot be there for 30 to 40 students sitting in a class. But given a population like India or even vast populated country, I know the practical difficulty of affording to that. But what I understand is that, and that's being incorporated nowadays, is that a part of the education can be generalized education where all of them learn the same way of pedagogical method of delivery, but there has to be some special grouping of students within the same curriculum so that each one learns in a different way. So that is what happening nowadays. This is one thing. Second thing is, we have been taught in all those days more of a problem solving approach. Now I can see the pedagogy is changing towards problem finding approach. Correct? And the third thing is, during my school days and even nowadays, our parents, our teachers, and our academic environment want us to think always more intellectual and more being intelligent, right? They never taught us to be foolish.
Mm.
If only we could think foolish, we can understand the opposite of what is called intelligence, right? So we need to inculcate the concept of thinking foolish, thinking stupidly. For that, it's not you're going to become foolish or stupid for life. That would make you to be very emotionally connected to those type of skill sets who can have a lesser thinking, because you cannot be an Einstein in physics all the time. Einstein could not be a great physics teacher unless he could come and think how a person could not understand his intellectual capability. So we need to inculcate these complex skills into the academia and to the pedagogy so that we create a global citizen, correct? So we don't want to create always great intellectuals who can be number one in the class. No, we can always create students to think from the other perspective also. And most importantly, this is the call for me for all the preschool or all the for the mid school. Please create an environment so that they take a risk and allow them to fail. That's very important.
Yeah, that's very
because you cannot be succeeding all through your life. For success only is very relative term, right? So allow them to take risk, allow them to fail, because they should come out of that shame, they should come out of that fear that if I fail, what will happen? It's not the failure that is making them to be concerned. It's a shame around that has been created around that system of ecosystem. So we as academicians, we as parents, we as society should create the culture where, guys, go try it. Nothing wrong in it. As long as you do the good thing, correct? Even if you did the bad thing, no problem. You can correct it. Don't repeat it. So I think these small and things will make a big difference in our academia. And I think that's really happening also.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I want to add here I really agree with what Sir has said, because of course the approach even today is to solve a problem with the questions that we give. So related to life and solve the problem. But I would like to add something different that never used to happen in the early years and happens now, is probably the parent engagement programs. So earlier, parents would send a child to school and they would believe that the teacher takes care of the whole soul development of the child, isn't it? But now we have parental community groups who are involved, and those parents help the school as community members to bring out the best in the child. So that is something, this is a scenario which never happened earlier. So the parents' contribution towards the field of education, bringing out the best in the students, I think is a good effort in the times that we are in now, because earlier it was never like that. I think our parents never went to school to understand what we are doing. It was mostly left to do well and do your things your way. But right now we have a lot of parental engagement, especially and specifically in KG, in the preschoolers. So that really brings about the boosting of the morale of the children, and thereby helping them develop their their personal personified image.
Daisy, I agree with you partially, but I disagree with you a lot, because I really feel that today parents, they are involved, but they don't teach their children to fail. Like I really agree with him that a child who has learned to deal with failure is a successful child, not a child who's always tasted success. And with the parental involvement come high expectations. With high expectations come this feeling that a child should not fail. This whole race of succeeding has I think overtaken everybody. So that is where I differ with you. Our parents probably didn't know which class we studied and what books we were studying. So even if we didn't do well, it wasn't such a bother to them. But today, when a child goes home with a report card, which is less than coming first, there is a lot of discussion in the house, if not.
I think that is more of parenting than to be spoken about, isn't
yes.
it? That is right parenting that needs to be spoken of, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
But I am basically talking about the engagement of the parents with children. I completely agree with you, but I think that is more of parenting, which probably would be another topic that we could take up with, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
You agree with
And another thing I'd like any one of you to answer is, in one of the previous panel discussions, we had this little discussion about developing writing skills, reading skills, which the panelists said is it's going down. And he seemed a bit concerned about it. And I did question him that, so what if a child doesn't write? A child doesn't read, because he's not required to read later. He's not required to write later. In future, as I see the future, with speech to text and text to speech, and with no writing involved, the whole I think the whole focus is going to be problem, seeing the problem and solving the problem. Whereas writing skills, and it's very difficult to imagine now. Again, the panelists was, I think, a little disturbed about not writing. Today, we cannot imagine. But in future, as I see it, writing skills are going to be redundant. Today, how many of us write? Is it good or bad?
I can take this question.
Yeah.
Ma'am, technology has been there throughout the human evolution, right? During the Stone Age, dealing with the equipments like stones and bow and arrow has been a great tool of learning, right? Nowadays, do we use stones and bow and arrows? But the genetic imprints of that particular skill sets in the Stone Age humans has come into our genetics also,
Yes.
and that has helped also.
Yes.
So we are not talking about this generation only. Today, if we do not train the skills of writing or whatever skills of traditional skill sets which we are asked to do, and in the name of technology development, we try to overlook those skills, I think that will have a genetic imprint in the future, wherein writing would become an art. Now, writing is not an art.
Agreed.
Correct?
Agreed.
So, calligraphy is an art. But if calligraphy is trained daily, it would be not an art.
Agreed.
So I don't want to take these simple writing skills and those skills to become an art in the future. There is empty, there are a hell a lot of time we have in our life, because a lot of technology is replacing a lot of our skill sets, but we don't want to replace these basic skill sets also with the technology. So I want to disagree with that. Despite the technology will help us in various things in future, there is no harm, there is no issue in putting some extra effort in learning these skills, which are very natural skills for us, and don't leave us to be an art in future. And one more thing just I want to add to this is that, again, this can be tuned according to the nano teaching or a nano training. What is nano training? Is going to individual kids and learning. One kid will be at ease in writing a lot. Yeah. One kid may not be. So according to their capability, we can put it, but not to totally eradicate it. For example, I used to have a photographic memory, but that did have a problem where I can memorize one page in the right side of that history book, still I remember. But if I read the same content on another left side, I have this issue. But if nano teaching was put on me, if some teachers would have understood that, or parents would have understood, they would have devised some other way of training True. For me. True. So what I'm saying is, writing skills are not that very difficult or not that bad. We can insist our kids to work on that, and that will have a interrelated genetic imprint in future skills. Maybe in future, we do not know that. So let's not get away with that. With the
no, fantastic. I totally agree with you. I'm not talking of eradicating writing skills, but not judging students on writing skills so much, because it is we have a lot of problem with this. We have a kindergarten also. So a lot of students, they are bright, they answer, they understand, but they just don't write. So what I tell the parents is that it doesn't matter, because either ultimately start writing something. It's not that he won't be able to write. But if he can type tomorrow, if we can read on text to speech, is perfectly okay, because by the time he reaches the 10th, probably assessment methods will change and requirements will change. So it's as a tool of assessment, don't use it, but yes, teach writing. So from that point of view, I really wanted it in my personal listening to ask you, is it right or no?
As I told you, it's a yes and no. But my idea would be to have a common minimum program. Just to give an example, I have a mother tongue which I can't speak at home because we don't speak commonly. I have a language from which state I come from, and that also my son is struggling. But that doesn't mean he will be totally devoid of that language. Yeah. So I insist that I ask him to speak the language, if not write. Correct? So we need to have some common minimum program where, when it comes to language or some skill sets, if you're not that great at least have some minimum component of that. So this is what I say, yes and no. I would not be totally devoid of taking out one skill out of them, but at least put them in a minimum level. At the same time, do not judge them or do not evaluate them totally on that skills also.
Right.
This is what I want to say.
True. Yes.
So I would like to add to say that at the Ryan Group of Institutions, we work on developing 4 different skills, and writing is one of them.
Right.
So I completely agree that when a child is in kindergarten, the writing skill needs to be developed. But like we are into an era where we are moving on more to technology. And that's what all of us have done. So like you said, we do write less these days. So that does not mean we don't make our kindergarten children write. So I completely am for the fact that children in kindergarten should develop their writing skills, and that is one of the skills that will work for them as they move on to the next classes, you know. So whether the exams are going to be online or they're going to be on their iPads, still writing is a component that they need to imbibe for the life that they're going to live in future. So I think writing is something that can be taken up seriously, but like you said, because they are small children, so if they cannot do one particular skill at a particular phase, it's okay to develop it later.
Yes.
But the developing of that skill should happen. So that is something that needs to be taken care of. And that's what I said in the beginning. Diverse learners, but an inclusive environment for them, so that all the diverse learners in that inclusive environment get to do all the things phase-wise.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Reddy, for you, what kind of digital platforms would be useful for preschools? I mean, what would you recommend, the kind of platforms?
Of course, I mean, the digital invasion into the school education post-COVID is immense. I'm sure everyone agrees to that. Right now, there are many free online resources which are available, which most of the schools use. There are specific learning management platforms that a lot of schools use. And as a school, we also deploy certain phonics. There are a lot of phonics that children can get into, Jolly Phonics or the other type of phonics that we have. Numeracy related one, pre-mathematical concepts also, we have a lot of apps that are being used right now. There's a Seesaw, which I am sure a lot of schools use it for a lot of learning. Toddler, which is outside, also is another example. Okay. I mean, there are many learning apps, but ultimately what I would suggest, as they rightly said, is teacher is crucial. Despite all the technologies coming or the invasion of technology or the apps come into the classroom, at that age of 3, 4, 5 years old, I think the human connect plays a greater role in their learning. So for me, whatever invasion happens, but teacher is the crucial person, crucial is the pivotal in the kindergarten for me.
Yes, I'm sure all of us agree with that. But has technology replaced the actual play activities that were done in preschools?
Not in my school, I can say that, because technology, we integrate it as part of their learning, but which does not replace the teacher or their activities, for example.
No, this is not an absolute question. Obviously, it can't.
Yeah.
But in the ratio basis, the kind of play activities our preschoolers used to do, now that we have technology, they are doing a lot of digital activity. So in later years, we are making them technology enabled in our preschools also, because we used to start computers in class 1, and now gradually it's coming to kindergarten also, not computers as computer, but play-based activity in the techno space. So from that point of view, I mean, now that technology is creeping in, it is eating in into their playtime. So I would like your views on that.
Okay, well, yeah. There are two, I mean, multifaceted, but still I will speak about two. One, at school or in school, I'm pretty sure every school definitely has enough space, enough equipment, so that we develop their gross motor and fine motor skills, because that's part of the physical development and the social development, which is part of the curriculum. Okay. The other aspect is that, okay, what happens at home? Okay, where a lot of digitalization and play with digitalization has taken over, because it could be because of the nuclear families that they live in with, or it could be the work pressure of both the parents, it could be. Okay. However, in school, there are three factors that generally we look into. One is acceptance of the teachers into digital platform, which is a challenge, because every teacher does not want the invasion of the technology to come into classroom. That's one challenge all of us face. Second is usefulness of the technology, how effective it is and how impactful it is for the learning. And then the third, which another component which schools look at, is ease of use. It should be user friendly, if you call it simple terms, for both It should be for the teacher as well as for a toddler. So those are the three components generally I look into. Yes, to a certain extent, I agree that children have lost that freedom of playing outside or getting into a park in the evenings or cycling in the neighborhood or so many other activities which maybe our generation did. Okay, but that's minimized. I do agree on that.
So I completely agree with Mr. Reddy. I also believe that the time to play has been reduced, but again, parenting, because they need to understand that if they're going to reduce the time for play and children are going to be on screen all the time, it's going to affect them a lot. So I think a lot of sessions need to be done on parenting, where parents are made aware with different workshops as to what are the harmful effects of children being online for so long. But as far as school is concerned, we too have segregated timings for children to be in a particular zone. So if they are in the zone where digital things are being, digital literacy is being integrated, then they play for some time. They are in some time for those games, like you said. Obviously, those games they're enlightening. They bring a whole closed world to them. Like even getting into Mowgli's shoes and seeing what he does through the whole animal form. With his friends in the animal kingdom. So that's something which they cannot experience. I mean, it's called the metaverse. So you cannot experience this when you see a movie, but when you step into that world of metaverse and you wear those things and you can actually walk with Mowgli into the jungle and feel the animals and touch them. So the augmented reality is something that's coming up and children enjoy learning from it. But yes, a stipulated time period for that and another time period for having the running, like the motor and sensory skill development is a must. That's what I would say. So
Any closing thoughts?
I'm not in the preschool working on a day-to-day basis, but one thing I want to tell you is that the greatest gift for the humans is their imagination, right? And the imagination is so unique. I cannot copy the imagination of somebody else. All this so-called metaverse and those technologies are excellent tools of an imagination of somebody else, which is getting imposed on me. And that imposition happened to me when I was in colleges. But that imposition is unfortunately is happening at the kids level right from the 2 or 3 years itself when they start watching the movies in their mobile. I'm happy with those technologies, but what is the repercussions of that is it kills a unique individualistic thinking imaginary process as every human can have. What I mean by that is when I read a book, which you can start from the age of 4 or 5, I read the book, I read a story, and I have my own imaginary process in my mind, which is so unique, sometimes even colorful than the metaverse combinations. That unique perception, what a child can undergo as an experience, is being killed by you forcing them always to go for an so-called imaginary world created by the digital world. So we need to be careful on that. Overloading of technology, overloading of digitalization at a very young age could be killing their imaginary process, which is the risk which we need to be taking care. As our learned experts from the school said, it can be an aid, it can be a complementary, it should not replace the human imaginary skills. So this is what as a generalist I would say. So please take that into consideration. Instead of putting too much of technology and digitalization in the preschools, already at home that is too much of digitalization is happening. We need to moderate it and take more of some traditional tools like ask them to have a reading time, because reading time gives them a lot of individualistic thinking. I think we should take care of that as well. Thanks a lot.
Any closing thoughts?
So I think Sir said it all, because we are into a modern era, and he means to say that we should still have the human touch to everything that we do. So I think that is quite applicable with whatever we do. To whatever extent when we are in our schools we can do, but the generation that comes after us might not do that. So because they will be all into technology. So I think that was an interesting thing to have a debate on the digital tools that we are using, and of course the human touch, which is very important. Thank you so much.
Any closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, closing thoughts as such, it's an interesting discussion so far, debate rather. My closing thought about kindergarten is that every child is unique. And I think if every school can think about developing those skills depending on the potential of the child, the school would be a different environment. And every child needs to be unique also. Similarly, every school also should be unique in their own pedagogy, in their own approaches for teaching and learning.
Thank you so much. As educators and as parents, I think we are torn between these two extremes of digitalization and our times when there was no digitalization. I'll tell you, in our school, we follow the flip method of learning. So we train them right from class one to go and explore, research, and come back and discuss. But there were a lot of parents who came to us and they said, as it is, during COVID times, they got used to screen time, and now you give them projects to explore. So they have a very good opportunity for more screen time. So I said, okay, we'll stop it. We'll stop it for a week, but let me see if they don't use those gadgets for a week. If we don't give them, they will still use it for your games or watching serials or whatever it is. So if they are off gadgets, we'll gladly do it. But the fact is that children are just not going off gadgets. If they are going to go on gadgets, they might as well do some constructive work. So my take on it, now that if this has come to our life, if you can't beat it, enjoy it. So So from that point of view, lots of innovation in preschool has teaching has come in. But a lot of it has to do with digital. Today, I did not want to discuss digital impingement, but somehow most of the innovation has come in from the digital world. So we landed up discussing more of the digital changes than anything else. So thank you very much. Very invigorating discussion. Thank you.